Before your eyes open, your hand is already reaching for the phone. The screen ignites. Something in your brain exhales, like it spent the entire night holding its breath just for this. You probably don't notice that anymore. That's the problem. Here is a question that should stop you. Who were you before an algorithm decided who you are? Before a system engineered by behavioral psychologists, funded by corporations worth more than most nations, optimized to the millisecond for compulsion. Before that system began selecting your desires, your fears, your politics, your self-worth. You believe your personality is yours. You believe your opinions emerged from experience. What if the most intimate parts of you have been quietly, systematically rewritten, not by life, not by growth, but by a screen you stare at for 7 hours every single day? This is not about addiction or screen time limits. This is about the silent replacement of the self you were supposed to become. And it already happened, while you were scrolling. Think about the last time you sat with nothing. No phone, no music, just you and your own mind. How long before something inside you started crawling? For most people under 30, that threshold is between 45 seconds and 2 minutes. 2 minutes. That is all the modern mind can tolerate before it begins to fracture. You've been told this is boredom. The culture has handed you flattering explanations for what is actually a clinical symptom. What you feel in that silence is not boredom. It's withdrawal. Your brain has been so thoroughly conditioned to receive a constant stream of novel input, new faces, new conflict, new humor, new tragedy in 3-second intervals, that the absence of that stream now registers as a neurological threat. Your nervous system reads silence the way it reads danger. The shift didn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happened in the accumulation of 10,000 small surrenders. The morning you chose the feed over your own thoughts. The night you felt something real, grief, joy, and instead of sitting inside it, you opened an app and dissolved it in content. Every time you did that, you taught your brain something permanent. Your internal world is insufficient. Your own mind, unassisted, is not a place worth inhabiting. The brain listened. It always listens. Music you once loved began sounding hollow. Books abandoned at page 40 because sentences don't move fast enough. Real conversations began feeling exhausting. Your emotional tolerance compressed. Your reward circuitry was recalibrated to expect returns in seconds, not seasons. The version of you from 5 years ago had longer attention, more comfort with uncertainty, a relationship with boredom that was generative rather than threatening. That version didn't vanish in one moment. It was replaced, quietly, by a version optimized not for your depth or fulfillment, but for engagement, for clicks, for time on platform. The algorithm didn't just change what you look at, it changed who is doing the looking. Now go beneath behavior and into biology. This is not a willpower problem. Something has changed inside the physical architecture of your brain. Start with dopamine, but forget what you think you know. Dopamine does not fire in response to reward. It fires in response to the anticipation of reward. It fires hardest when the outcome is uncertain. When you don't know whether the next scroll will deliver something thrilling or dull, your brain floods with dopamine precisely because of that uncertainty. Neuroscientists call this variable reward scheduling. Every major social platform has it engineered into its core. The pull-to-refresh gesture you perform dozens of times daily is functionally identical to pulling a slot machine lever. Every time that dopamine loop fires, your prefrontal cortex gets slightly suppressed, the part governing long-term thinking, impulse control, moral reasoning, and identity formation. Across thousands of repetitions, the balance of power inside your skull shifts. The limbic system, ancient, reactive, emotional, starts winning more arguments. The rational, reflective mind starts losing them. You feel this as impulsivity, difficulty with decisions, a strange disconnection from your own values, knowing exactly what you should do and doing the opposite anyway. But the deepest damage is somewhere else. Your brain contains a system called the default mode network. It activates during stillness, during daydreaming, reflection, Imagination, the processing of memory. This is where identity lives, where empathy is constructed, where you make meaning out of experience, where the coherent narrative of who you are gets written. The research is unambiguous. Chronic, compulsive smartphone use systematically disrupts default mode network function. Every gap of quiet gets filled. Every moment of stillness gets plugged. And the DMN, starved of the silence it requires, atrophies. The consequences are not subtle. Weakened self-concept clarity, increased anxiety, decreased empathy, diminished capacity to connect your past to your present to your future in a coherent story. Without that story, identity becomes unstable, fragmented, dependent on external input just to feel real. The adolescent and young adult brain, still completing its final developmental stages into the mid-20s, is uniquely vulnerable to this rewiring. The prefrontal cortex, still being constructed, is being sculpted right now by a system designed not for your flourishing, but for your monetization. Relationships are suffering, not dramatically, but in the quiet, erosive way that is far more dangerous. The inability to sit in comfortable silence with another person. The compulsive need to document experiences rather than inhabit them. The creeping sensation during real conversation that you are performing rather than connecting. This is the direct consequence of years practicing human interaction. In an environment where everything is edited, curated, and optimized for approval. In the gap between who you are online and who you are in a room, anxiety moves in and makes itself at home. The comparison economy has done something particularly vicious to ambition. You consume 10 pieces of content daily about people building things, achieving things. And instead of translating into fuel, that consumption becomes a strange, heavy exhaustion. Psychologists call this self-discrepancy theory, a gap made enormous and omnipresent by a daily flood of curated highlight reels does not motivate. It immobilizes. It produces a low-grade chronic shame most people in this generation cannot name but carry permanently lodged in their chest. Creativity has quietly hollowed out. Original thought requires incubation. The mind wandering without destination, making unexpected connections, sitting inside a problem long enough for something new to surface. That process cannot survive in a mind trained to abandon any thought that fails to produce stimulation within 90 seconds. Many people mistake this absence of original thought for personal failing, lack of talent, lack of intelligence, when it is actually the direct neurological consequence of an environment that never permitted original thought to form. So what do you actually do? Not with a 30-day challenge or a productivity app. That approach lives inside the same logic that created the problem. You cannot rewire a hijacked brain with a checklist. You do not need a detox. You need a reconquest. It begins with understanding this. The discomfort you feel when you set the phone down is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something is finally working. That crawling, restless, desperate feeling within minutes of disconnection, that is your dopamine system in protest. The only path back to baseline is to let it protest, to sit inside that discomfort with full knowledge of what it is and choose not to answer it. This is dopamine recalibration in its real, unglamorous form. It is uncomfortable the way genuine withdrawal is uncomfortable, and it works the way genuine recalibration works, slowly, invisibly, and then suddenly and completely. The deeper work is rebuilding the default mode network. This requires something modern culture has made almost subversive: unstructured time. Deliberately, defensively protected unstructured time. Not meditation, not journaling, the raw, unstimulated experience of being alive without an agenda. Walking without headphones, sitting without a destination, allowing your mind to move without directing it. This is not wasted time. This is when memories consolidate, identity integrates, and the person you are assembles itself from experience and asks the question no algorithm will ever ask on your behalf. What does any of this mean to me? Deliberately engage in activities that build your sense of self through direct experience. learning an instrument not to post about it, running without tracking it, reading without quoting it. People who regularly engage in effortful, non-digital skill-building report dramatically stronger self-concept clarity. They carry a private proof of self that no metric can touch. Build it deliberately. Your nervous system also requires intervention. Chronic high-stimulation screen use holds your fight-or-flight architecture in persistent low-grade activation, felt as baseline restlessness, sleep that never quite restores. Deliberate breathing, cold exposure, time in natural environments without devices are direct recalibrations guiding your autonomic nervous system back toward the state where genuine rest, creativity, and emotional processing become available again. And learn, urgently, to treat boredom as medicine. Boredom is not an absence. It is the presence of your own mind, unmediated, asking to be taken seriously. Every civilization that produced enduring art, philosophy, and science did so under conditions of profound, unavoidable boredom by modern standards. The mind left without distraction does not collapse. It creates. You have been taught to fear your own mind in silence. That fear is the most sophisticated product the attention economy ever manufactured. Stop buying it. That moment this morning, the hand moving before the eyes opened, the screen flooding your brain before a single conscious thought had formed. It sits differently now, doesn't it? The discomfort you're feeling is important. Do not scroll past it. You are not a fixed thing. The human brain is the most adaptive, most astonishingly plastic organ evolution has ever produced. The question has never been whether your brain will be shaped by your environment. It will be. It always has been. The only question is whether you will be conscious of that shaping. Whether the person you are becoming is a person you chose, or a person chosen for you by systems designed to profit from your unconsciousness. The algorithm knows what makes you stop scrolling, what triggers your insecurity, what specific flavor of outrage keeps you engaged for 17 more minutes. It has built a detailed model of your psychological vulnerabilities and deploys it against you every time you open the app. But there is one thing it does not know. It cannot see the person who exists in the silence between notifications. The person who thinks in full sentences when given enough time. Who feels things with genuine depth when those feelings are not immediately dissolved in content. Who, given real unstructured time and genuine solitude, begins to want things, specific, personal, uninfluenced things, that no feed ever suggested and no algorithm ever predicted. The question that opened this was, who were you before the algorithm decided? But that is not quite the right question anymore. The right question, the one worth sitting with in silence without reaching for your phone, is this: who will you be when you decide to?